Okay, hello there, and welcome to another episode of News from the Gelding. Okay, so my name's John Chapman. I'm a self-published fantasy author, occasional artist, and a good old friend of me old mate, Sir Percival.
Leave me alone, you swine.
He's a bit pissed off with me today because I caught him playing with his magic wand and told him to stop it. Anyway, so today I'm going to be talking about KDP's print-on-demand service. So I'm going to be talking about my direct experience of it over the last couple of years and generally giving it a quality test, if you will, just to see whether it's worth pursuing. Now, I think ideally it is worth pursuing any print-on-demand service because it means that you don't have to stock a vast number of your books which may not sell. In my case, I haven't sold very many at all, so if I'd gone ahead and printed a load of copies, I'd just have them hanging around and I wouldn't be able to get rid of them. So this allows the customer to purchase the book, which is then printed. One copy is printed especially for them, packaged and sent to them. You don't have to do anything, and most importantly, you don't have to pay a penny yourself. A lot of people, they don't have Kindles or they don't like reading from a screen, and so they like the physicality of a book. I know I am one of those people. I've got a Kindle and I do read it occasionally, but you can't beat the look and feel of a physical book. So yes, let's get down to it and see whether KDP's version is worth pursuing. So let's talk about build quality first of all off the bat. So one of the best features is it's got a very strong spine. It's glued in there with something like magma or something. So it's virtually indestructible. The pages aren't going to fall out of this thing. And this particular copy has been read and there's no wrinkles on the spine itself, nothing at all. So if you're one of these people that likes to fling your book around willy-nilly, it will survive such encounters. The pages are, or the paper's quite nice. It's nicely weighted. I've gone for the cream paper. You can choose cream or white. It's got a nice feel to it, quite substantial. And the cream works quite well. I think I don't like the page to be too bright, so that works nicely. Okay, let's go to the cover. Right, so I've taken the liberty of scanning my own book, my first book, James of Galandar. So we can see here there's some blemishes here, but that's from the scanning itself, so we'll ignore those little dots and errant hairs that have fallen from my beard and look at the quality of the print itself. So the colors are very bright, vibrant, nice saturation. It's the image that you provide is 300 dots per inch. So this is a fairly nicely printed image. I mean, you're never going to look at it this close up, but I mean, the book in your hand, it looks the same as the image I sent them, so I'm pretty happy with that. One thing I would say is that the version I've printed is on a matte paper finish. I did try using the glossy version, but I found that whatever they use to laminate the gloss on, it comes off very quick, very easily. In fact, the book that they sent me was already starting to peel off around the edges, so that's a problem. I wouldn't touch the glossy, to be honest, and I think the matte finish looks more professional, which is what we're aiming for. We want a book that looks indistinguishable, or if not better than a traditionally published book. The thing to bear in mind, though, when you're sending your image off for the print version, is you've got to be very careful. So after having created your Kindle cover, it's not a simple matter of just slapping that same cover on your book. The one that you've created will be in RGB mode, whatever you've used. I use Photoshop myself, so the colors red, green, blue are then using the screen as illumination through it, so there's a vast number of colors achieved through that, a richer image really. But what you need for doing your print version is a CMYK version, cyan, magenta, yellow, and the K stands for black. So we're talking about print now. We're talking about those three primary colors or thereabouts and black, and it's concentrations and mixtures of those using white as the background. So it's not an illuminated background, so the colors can be less vibrant depending on the saturations of black that you're using. So the first versions I did of James of Gallander were very dark, and it took me about 3 different proof copies to get the colors as I wanted. If you're using a book editor, a book designer, they will already know this. They should do. And they will sort the image out for you if you've already got your cover in RGB. You can try just putting that RGB image straight in, and it might turn out okay, but chances are it won't. The colors won't be the ones you've chosen, and that you run the risk of it being overly dark or washed out even. Okay, so now let's switch over to the interior of this damn book. This is just a scanning of the first page of the second book, the sequel to the first one. I've just got the proof copy of it. And if we zoom in, we can see that the print quality here is very good indeed. Very clear, no pixelation as such. Well, you wouldn't really see pixelation, but the printing is very clear. No problems there at all. But there are some issues. These are 2 views of the map that appears in both of the books, one half of the map. So the first one here is the PDF, the original PDF image, and this is the print image. So on the surface there's not that much difference, but there is a lack of, straight away you can see the lack of detail, especially on the smaller typography there. But if we take a closer look, we can see what's going on. So the original PDF is here. This is pixel perfect to the screen, so you're not losing any definition. I've done it to the dimensions of this video. This is the PDF, and we can see there's no pixelation here as such. It's a very clean image. Even down at this level, it's very clean. If we go on next, this is the KDP's printed version. So as you can see, there's this very pronounced jagged aberration on the straight lines, on the border, well, on everything, and it's very odd. I'm not quite sure why that has happened. I've also printed the same image, the same map, using my printer, just a £40 basic printer, and this is what that comes up with. So it doesn't have that jaggedness. It's not that clear, but it doesn't have that error that we have on this version. So this is where I'm slightly stumped. I'm not quite sure why this has happened, because if we go back to the image of the print here, if we zoom right in on the title and the typography I've used for the title there, Perrin, see that line that's across the E? That is part of the style of the letter E in this character set that I've used, and that line is perfectly printed. There's no jaggedness there whatsoever. In fact, if we look at anywhere else along the typography, there's nothing. There's no jagged lines at all. So this leads me to believe there's an issue with the images that I'm sending. But as you could tell from the PDF version, it's very, very clear. There's no pixelation whatsoever. And my printer prints it without those jagged lines. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. If anyone knows, please let me know. Okay, so that's the interior. Now let's get down to the trim of the book. How they cut it down to size and how that relates to the formatting that you've sent Amazon. So I've already covered this in a previous episode. I'll just do a little clip here where I was looking at the proof copies I had previously got. And what I noticed straight away was that each book was a slightly different trim size. Now, the variance between the largest and the smallest of these was around 4mm. That doesn't sound very much, but it's noticeable. It's very definitely noticeable. And the implications of this is that if you're if you're doing books of a series, like mine's a trilogy, if you've got all 3 books lined up on a shelf and they're all slightly different sizes, it just looks completely naff. So I'm not quite sure why that's happening. So if we take my book here, James of Galandar, it's I do the smallest size format that they do, which is 8 inches by 5. And if we measure this one here, I'm just going to do it for you. So on the width, it's a 1/16 of an inch off, so it's less than it's a 1/16 shorter than it should be. Height wise, yeah, we're almost an eighth smaller than it should be. So that's quite odd, because if I bring up now, this is the template that you use to create your cover, and it's very, very accurate. I mean, it's accurate to within, I don't know, tenths of a millimeter. So the image is then key to this template, and so you've got those dotted lines there. That's the trim. That's where it would be ideally trimmed, but you fix your images to the white area, so it could be trimmed really anywhere within that border. But where the white blocks show, that's the size of the book. So that's the 5 by 8 inch sizing. So it's very unlikely, or it should be unlikely, that it's trimmed anywhere within that white border. But as we can see from me measuring my book, it has indeed been trimmed beyond that white border. So that's quite odd. I think mainly the template is used for keying the spine in. So when it comes to making the book, the spine is centered and everything else wraps around that, as it should be. That's how we ensure we have a central text, that it's centered correctly, and any images are correctly centered. So you have to be very, very careful. So millimeters, we're talking millimeters. If you're a millimeter out, you've got problems. So if we look at this picture, this shows my 2 books together. We've got the James of Galandar print and the proof copy of my new book, which is slightly thicker, as you can see. There's over 100,000 words in the second book. One thing we can see straight away is that the books are exactly the same size. So in this instance, they have been trimmed correctly, if but slightly smaller than they should be. There's another problem there. If we look on the spine, you can see a dark line on the top, and the text is not aligned correctly. It's slightly below center. Now, I went apeshit when I saw this, because I thought I'd set it all up perfectly. But as we can see here, yeah, there's on the back as well, the part of the spine has wrapped around the back. But when I checked my template, again, I was 1 millimeter out. These tolerances are very small and they're very easy to miss, so you have to be very careful. So don't blame Amazon straight away for problems that you get with your book. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about is costing. Now, of course, it doesn't cost you a penny to do this. The customer pays the price and the printing is extracted from that. But if we bring up this calculator that Amazon provide, we can work out what kind of royalty we can expect from our book. So first of all, you've got to say whether you're using black or coloured ink. I'm just using black ink inside. Number of pages is 360 in my new book. You pick your marketplace, which for me is in the UK. Then you put in your anticipated list price. So I'm selling mine for £8.99. It's quite a bit more than I would sell it for, but I'll tell you why it's a bit more in a moment. So now it automatically generates a number of things. The printing cost is £4.30. The minimum list price that you can sell it for is £7.17, and the Amazon royalty that I will get for my book is £1.10. Expanded distribution is if your book is expensive enough, if you make it mine would have to be over £10, but it allows shops to stock your book from them as part of the print on demand thing. But there's no way I was going to do that, because it's just going to make the book way too expensive. But so the royalty that Amazon give on print copies is 60%, But if we look at that £1.10, we don't need to be a mathematician to work out that that is not 60% of £9. So they're doing something a little bit sneaky here, but it's perfectly justified the way they've done it. What I've actually got here is a 12% royalty based on the unit price. So what the hell is Amazon doing here? So before the print costs are factored in, Amazon apply the royalty straight away to the unit price. So $8.99, bang, they divide it 60-40. So Amazon keep their 40%, £3.60, and then out of the remainder, the author pays the print costs out of their royalty, which is a very odd way of doing it. Basically, this means that I'm left with a 12% royalty. Amazon's royalty isn't touched. Very, very odd way of doing it. I imagine what they would do is you have the unit price, you subtract the print fees, and then the royalty would be applied on what's left. The customer at the end of the day is paying this money. They're paying for the printing. So why should it come out of the author's royalty? What it means, of course, is that Amazon's royalty share is unaffected at all. They get a 40% share of the unit price without, and all it does then is squeeze the royalty that the author gets. Of course, the ways around this would be to make a smaller book. If you're releasing a novella, 100 pages or so, you would get far more. The print costs would be negligible, a couple of pound, and you would get more royalty, but Amazon would still get the lion's share of it. If you're doing a larger book like mine, I suppose you could reduce the font size and cram the book in fewer pages, but you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. If you're writing like I am, it's kind of epic fantasy, you want a fairly meaty sized book. You don't want a little pamphlet sized thing with tiny little script that you can barely read. You want something substantial, something that has presence on your shelf. But by doing so, you're reducing the amount of money that you can get. And it also makes the unit price a lot more than it should be. Now, if Amazon did the royalty cut after the print cost had been factored in, the books could sell for the same amount, or they're in the ballpark of traditionally published books. A book this size should never be having to be sold for $8.99. Although I've seen other self-published authors selling books, novellas, for close to £10, just to circumvent this lack of royalty. But that's just crazy. I've tried to make it as affordable as I can, and still get a quid out of it. But that's the way Amazon are running it, and we are slaves to that system if that's what you use. Then there are other print-on-demand services. I don't have any experience of them, so I can't talk about them. But I think, in conclusion, the actual quality of the product you get, if you do the work and get the files that you send them perfect, chances are you're going to come back with something that looks pretty damn good, and is pretty hard wearing. The negative of course is the costing and how much you're having to charge for your book, which undoubtedly puts customers off. There's a convention within books. We kind of know how much a book should cost. 100,000 words, 360 pages. I don't know, you'd be paying maybe £7 for something like that from a traditional publisher. You wouldn't be paying £9. So you're putting people off straight away. So in a way, Amazon are shooting themselves in the foot by making these books more expensive than they should be. But there we are. That's my take on things. If you haven't tried it yet, I would definitely give it a go. It's another revenue stream. There's customers there that would buy your book in a print copy that wouldn't touch it in the digital format. So it's good to have another version of your book out there. yeah, give it a go, see how you get on. If you know more than I know, let me know in the comments where I'm going wrong with those images or anything else that I've got wrong, and that would be lovely. Okay, let's just leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you wish, if all goes well, I'll see you soon with something else. Okay, cheerio, cheerio. Say goodbye, Sir Percival.
Fuck off and leave me alone.
Charming.